And of all of the signs of a toxic manager, I find this is the one that has had the highest impact on my clients and the people that I've worked with. Hello, welcome back to my channel where I help you slay your career and cultivate the successful life you deserve. For the best career advice in cyberspace, make sure you tap that subscription button and the notification bell. I release 2 new videos each week. Let's talk about your toxic AF boss, shall we? If you haven't already seen it, about a year ago, I made a signs that your workplace is toxic video. And one of the most consistent themes that I found coming up in the comments was about toxic bosses. And really, in my opinion, toxic bosses are the ultimate driver for a toxic work environment. The rest of the company can be absolutely awesome and incredible, but if you have a toxic manager, it's not gonna go down well. So in today's video, I am sharing with you 9 signs that your boss is toxic. And they're not only doing this to make you potentially look bad, they're also doing this to make them look good and probably very necessary. If you are ready to figure out if your boss meets that criteria, tap the like button and let's jump into it. The first sign that your boss is toxic is that they skew towards micromanagement, and not just occasionally. They're micromanaging you all the time about all of the things. I have an entire video on micromanagement, and sometimes micromanagement is just because they don't really know what they're doing. But toxic managers actually use micromanagement as one of the ways to, let's just say it, drive you crazy. And their micromanagement isn't just annoying, it is actually something that does get in the way of you being able to do your job and to do your job effectively. Your micromanaging boss also probably likes to send those micromanaging emails at 11:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and maybe even wants to hop on a call to just walk you through things and how they should be done. This toxic boss behavior also coincides with the next sign of a toxic manager, and that is being overly critical. Your manager should absolutely be giving you constructive feedback on a regular basis. One part of their job, after all, is to help you become better at what you do and more successful in your career. And they can't do that without delivering feedback. And sometimes that feedback is going to be critical. Where the toxic manager ranges, though, is all of their feedback is critical, and it's overwhelmingly and sometimes even necessarily critical. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time that your boss actually acknowledged that you did something well? And when you do something that is really exceptional and you are getting praise and accolades, does your boss still find something that you did wrong with it? Or do you find the critical feedback that they give you really benign, inactionable, or really just something that is a matter of their opinion? Or is it something that best practices and industry experts would actually disagree with? These are signs that your boss is being critical just to be critical. And there's a reason for this. Your critical boss wants to undermine your confidence in your work and the successes that you are actually accomplishing at your job. And they have all of their toxic reasons, which I am not going to invest time in this video talking about. But that constant criticism is a big red flag that you have a toxic boss on your hands. And this actually leads me directly into my next sign of a toxic manager, and that is when they are undermining you. The toxic manager, especially through their unfair criticism, will actually begin to undermine you. They might do this privately in your one-on-one and through that unfair criticism, but they actually may even take additional steps and start undermining you in front of other people, whether it's in front of your team, in team meetings, or even in front of customers and partners who you work with. Your toxic manager is doing this as a power play, and what ends up happening is that your toxic manager now has an excuse to micromanage you even more because they have just corroded the confidence that other people actually have in you. And in my opinion, this is one of the most dangerous behaviors of a toxic manager because it can seriously impede your ability to do your job and for you to really thrive at what you do. The reason for that is when they undermine you enough, you are not going to be given the opportunities that you need in order to grow in your career. And one of the ways that they undermine you is actually going to lead directly into the next sign of a toxic manager. And of all of the signs of a toxic manager, I find this is the one that has had the highest impact on my clients and the people that I've worked with. The fourth sign of a toxic manager is they refuse to acknowledge your accomplishments. Now, I touched on this a little bit when we talked about criticism, but a toxic boss or a toxic manager is not going to be able to acknowledge anything that you have done well. This not only is going to be something that can have a very high impact on your confidence, but this is also going to have a direct impact in your compensation and your opportunity to advance in your work. Because if they refuse to acknowledge the great things that you're doing, that is going to show up on things like your performance review. And if you're applying for a job internally, this is even something that could actually impact you. Plus, let's just be really honest here. Most people, at least occasionally, need a little bit of external validation to let them know that they're doing good things. After all, if we don't know the things that we're doing at work that are going really, really well, that are making an actual mark for our company and for our team, it's going to inhibit our ability to actually focus there and do more of those things to amplify our awesomeness to make a bigger impact overall. So really, this toxic manager behavior is hurting everyone, including your toxic boss themselves. And as if it wouldn't be bad enough if they just did those things, they're not going to leave it there. No, your toxic manager is going to just twist the knife while they're at it. And this brings me to my next sign of a toxic manager, and that is they are going to create obstacles for you. They are going to get in the way of the work that you do. And yes, they might be using tools like micromanagement and unfair criticism in order to create obstacles for you. But they might be doing other more nuanced things like refusing to support the work that you do, or just refusing you to give you actual opportunities to flex and grow your skills at work. And actually, drawing from my personal experience here, the most toxic manager that I worked with had this phenomenal ability of taking a task that should have taken 30 minutes and turning it into 3 weeks of work and disorganization and just chaos. Your toxic manager is going to create a lot of hoops for you to jump through, a lot of checkpoints, and a lot of really strange and benign rules in order for you to actually accomplish your goals. Now, the next sign of a toxic manager is one that can be a little bit more nuanced, but it's one that is very, very dangerous, and that is that toxic bosses tend to speak poorly about other people. Let me guarantee just one thing for you. If you hear your manager talking poorly about other people, especially if they're talking poorly about your coworkers, they're talking poorly about you to other people as well. And if you've been hanging out with me here on my channel for a while, you know my opinions on gossip and exactly how useless and toxic it is. But toxic people just can't help but drag other people down to their level. And because they, at their core, feel so much ugliness and awfulness about themselves, they need to create a reality for themselves where everyone is as awful and incompetent and negative and miserable as they are. And that's why they're gossiping about your coworkers, about other people at the company, and yes, probably about you. When this is a toxic manager behavior, this can actually become a very easy trap for you to fall down along with them. Do not fall into that trap no matter what you do. But the most important thing that you can do in this circumstance is making sure that you are giving them an opportunity to rise up to your level instead of stooping down to theirs. Like the wonderful and glorious Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. And that brings me into one of the more extreme, but also not entirely infrequent, signs of a toxic manager. Your toxic manager may exhibit some unethical behavior and unethical decision making. You know, that boss who's telling you that it's okay for you to just act now and ask for forgiveness later, and you know that what they're asking you to do or what they're encouraging you to do is bending but really breaking all of the rules, if not the law. This toxic manager behavior is going to bring you to lows that you never even knew existed. If your toxic boss is exhibiting this behavior, you need to find a way out as quickly as possible. But I want to be clear here as well, as this doesn't always show up as things that are obviously wrong. This also shows up as things that are completely unethical, but things that are unfortunately still commonplace in today's work environment. Things like discrimination that are still happening day to day. These types of behaviors are not just creating a toxic environment, they're creating a very hostile work environment for you and for others on your team and at your company. Now, of course, when your toxic boss does any of those things, they are going to display sign number 8 of a toxic manager, and that is going to be that they completely lack accountability. Of course, this also happens to be a trait of our narcissists and psychopaths. I do have videos on both of those types of people as well if you want to check them out after this one. When your toxic boss makes a mistake, when they completely mess things up, they're going to hold zero accountability, and guess what? They're gonna find a way to make it your fault. Maybe if you're lucky, they're gonna blame it all on one of your coworkers. Well, you kind of idly stand by and maybe are just happy that it didn't fall onto you. And I think that this is the worst part about the toxic manager, because their lack of accountability is going to completely stunt their professional development. They're going to stay the toxic boss because they are not going to take any accountability or responsibility for the bad work environment that they're creating and the negative results that they're achieving as a direct result of their toxic boss behavior. And that leads me directly to sign 9 that your boss is toxic, and that is that they're just in general an asshole. And yeah, that is basically the only way that I can sum this up. When you're working with a jerk and they're creating a bad environment, and they are not just a bad manager, but they are a toxic boss who's doing one or more of the above listed things, this is a toxic manager. And the sad reality is, because especially when it's paired with things like their lack of accountability, it's not going to get fixed. Which leads me now into the bonus tip that I have for you, and that is that you need to take action. Whether it's finding a way to transfer onto a team that doesn't have a toxic boss, or if you're in a toxic company, actually finding an exit strategy into a new company, you need to take action. Things are not going to improve, and staying in a toxic workplace or working for a toxic manager has real implications and is a real risk to your mental health and your well-being. I do have videos on job search strategies and everything like that, which you absolutely do need to check out. But if you haven't already, make sure and click subscribe, because my next few videos are going to help you figure out how to survive while you're still in that environment and how to actually recover when you escape from it. But there's one thing right now that you need to do if you are working with a toxic manager, and this is the most important thing that you can do in a toxic work environment in general, and that is to start cultivating positivity in your life. When you have a toxic boss, when you are in a toxic work environment, you are spending a lot of time every single workday in a negative space, and this is not good for you, my friend. So finding ways to intentionally cultivate positivity into your life on a daily basis and to, have that after work refresh are really, really important. You can get started right here with this video that I want you to go and watch after this one. If this video helped you figure out if your boss is actually toxic AF, give it a like. Let me know if it helped down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.